A fire broke out in a warehouse building near the airport in the Russian city of Nizhny Novgorod, where insulation materials are stored. Local Telegram channels reported this. Local residents say that a powerful explosion occurred in the area before the fire. As a result of the fire, which covered an area of 8,400 square meters, most of the warehouse was completely burned down. 35 pieces of equipment and more than 100 firefighters were deployed to the area. It is said that there were no casualties.
Получается продажа брать. Можно подать пол улицы. Да, конечно.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha and Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski walked out of the room during the speech by their Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe ministerial meeting in Malta on Thursday. Lavrov was in Malta for the annual meeting of the OSCE in his first visit to a European Union nation since Russia's invasion of Ukraine nearly 3 years ago. Sybiha, Sikorsky and other officials got up and left the room when Lavrov's speech began. It has been relatively rare for Lavrov to attend forums involving senior Western officials, although he recently took part in the United Nations General Assembly and the G20 summit in Brazil. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken worked to shore up Allied support for Ukraine ahead of President-elect Donald Trump's return to the White House in January as he attended 2 days of talks with NATO foreign ministers in Brussels. Outgoing President Joe Biden will not be in power when NATO leaders gather for their next summit in June, but he has stepped up the delivery of weapons and other material to Ukraine over the past several months and has also eased restrictions on how Kiev can use them. Biden's goal is to put Ukraine in the best position possible to negotiate a settlement and has come as Moscow has made significant advances in the conflict and North Korean troops have moved to assist Russian forces. By contrast, Trump has been skeptical of the U.S. assistance and has suggested that his administration will sharply curtail or end it. I think what we're working to do in the time that we have left is to give Ukraine, to give our own country, to give all the allies and partners that support Ukraine the strongest possible hand to use next year and beyond, Blinken told reporters in Brussels on Wednesday as he attended the talks with fellow NATO ministers. If Ukraine determines that it needs to continue the fight, we want to make sure it has what it needs to continue that fight, the money, the munitions, the mobilized forces. If it chooses to engage in a negotiation, and that assumes, of course, that Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russia have any intent of doing that, then, again, we want to make sure it's from a position of strength, he added. Blinken also spoke about importance of investing in NATO, and also commented on the situation in Syria. We have enduring security interests in Syria, particularly the interest in making sure that ISIS doesn't resurrect and doesn't come back, he said. It's profoundly onerous to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so our own engagement and presence remains important, he added.
I think what we're working to do in the time that we have left is to give Ukraine, to give our own country, to give all the allies and partners that support Ukraine the strongest possible hand to use next year and beyond. If Ukraine determines that it needs to continue the fight, we want to make sure it has what it needs to continue that fight. The money, the munitions, the mobilized forces. If it chooses to engage in a negotiation, and that assumes, of course, that Putin and Russia have any intent of doing that, then, again, we want to make sure it's from a position of strength. And from my perspective, I think what I'm trying to do, not just with Ukraine, but across the board, is to give the incoming administration the strongest hand to play in all of these areas, and to pass the baton in a way that they can hit the ground running, because the world doesn't stop just because we have a political transition underway in the United States.
Secretary Blinken, President Zelensky in the last few days.
What's so unique about NATO is the compact that each of its members make, that an attack on one is an attack on all. What's so powerful about that is it tells any would-be aggressor, if you go after one of us, you're going to have to deal with all of us. That is the most powerful deterrent to war breaking out in the first place. That is the most powerful deterrent against aggression. It's not a surprise that Russia has not attacked directly a NATO member. So when we all talk about this powerful desire to avoid conflicts, to prevent wars, to have peace, the best way to do that is through our ongoing investment in the world's most successful defensive alliance, and that is NATO. We have enduring interests, enduring security interests in Syria, particularly the interest in making sure that ISIS doesn't resurrect and doesn't come back. There was a tremendous success by the Obama administration and then completed by the first Trump administration to end the so-called geographic caliphate that had been established, all of the ground and the almost physical state that had been established. It's profoundly onerous to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so our own engagement and presence remains important. Partners who are working to make sure that, again, we don't see a resurrection of an extremist caliphate, a jihadist caliphate, that remains vital.